What's going on, guys? Kevin here from thesportsgeek.com, and in this video, I'm going to go over my DraftKings and FanDuel NFL Week 4 picks. If you want to get updates on when I post new DraftKings and FanDuel videos, make sure you click that gear icon underneath the YouTube video if you're on a desktop, or that bell icon that you can see in the image on the right if you're on a mobile device. That way you'll get notifications on when I post a new video. All right, so before we move on to NFL Week 4, I'm going to take a look back at my NFL Week 3 picks from last week's video. I already did a bit of a lineup review on my Sports Geek second channel, so if you haven't already checked that out, I'll leave a link in the description below, or you can type in YouTube, the Sports Geek second, and you'll find my second channel where I went over some of my lineups last week. I had about 5 core QBs that I used in the Millie Maker contest between all of my lineups, and pretty much all the QBs did pretty brutal. The stacks just did pretty awful for the week. So it was a bad week for me. And the picks I gave out in the video, again, were pretty bad. On the left-hand side there, you can see my solid pick, Jarvis Landry, 29 points. That was pretty much it for the video. And then on the right-hand side, you can see QB Marcus Mariota only put up 7 points. I had him paired with Tajay Sharp, who put up 7 points. Eric Decker had a brutal game with 4 points. D'Angelo Williams put up 8 points. And one of the tight ends I mentioned, Jared Cook, ended up getting injured in the first half. So I think he only had about 2.5 DraftKings points. So those bad weeks do happen, unfortunately. That's why I use bankroll management. That's why I really preach that you set aside an amount that you can afford to lose each week, because sometimes throughout the NFL season, you're going to have a week where you just get pretty much everything wrong. That's what happened to me this week, but I'm looking to bounce back in week 4. And I tweeted it out a couple times, but if you missed it, I did a wide receiver review of my Sports Geek model at Fantasy Labs. That was on the Fantasy Labs YouTube channel. So basically, I gave out 5 receivers I liked. 3 of those receivers had really big games, Jarvis Landry, Antonio Brown, and Terrell Pryor, who was about 3% owned and about 3,400 last week on DraftKings. He had a monster game. So that pick video actually did pretty good. And if you guys do enjoy those Fantasy Labs model review videos, hit that thumbs up or like button here on YouTube. If I get 1,000 likes on this video, I'll do another Fantasy Labs position preview, and I'll make sure I tweet and email that out when I do it. I'll try to cover another position, maybe quarterback this week. And also, I give out picks via email Saturday or Sunday morning. So if you're not signed up for my email newsletter, make sure you sign up by clicking on the lineup tool link in the YouTube description below. And even though my picks didn't do too great this week, I did get some good emails from people who won some money. This was my favorite email from Jeff. He said he entered in the Thursday contest on FanDuel. He came in first place and won $10,000. So that's huge. Congrats to you, Jeff. And if you guys aren't playing at FanDuel yet and you want to give it a try, I've got my referral link in the YouTube description below. And he also added a little PS, I'm loving your pro model on Fantasy Labs. So he's talking about the Sports Geek Pro model. If you guys haven't checked out Fantasy Labs yet, I've got a link in my YouTube description of that as well. And you get access to my Sports Geek Pro model if you sign up for an account. All right, so moving on to my DraftKings and FanDuel NFL Week 4 picks. We're going to start it off with a QB wide receiver stack. I got Kirk Cousins from the Redskins, 6,500 on DraftKings, 7,600 on FanDuel, paired up with Jamison Crowder, 4,200 on FanDuel, or 4,200 on DraftKings, 6,000 on FanDuel. The Redskins are at home versus the Browns as 8-point favorites, with a decently high total set at 45.5 points. The Browns are 22nd in yards against per passing attempt, and they're giving up an average of 28 points against. So the Browns don't have a great defense. I think the Redskins should be able to pick on them. Cousins has attempted 35 or more passes in each game and failed to hit the 300-yard bonus just once last week, missing by just 4 yards. And there's lots of stacks you could make with the Redskins, but in my opinion, Crowder might be the best one this week. Crowder has gotten 7 or more targets in each game, and I think he offers a lot of value at the price. Next up, my second stack of the week, we got Brock Osweiler from the Texans, 5,800 on DraftKings, 7,300 on FanDuel, paired with his number 1 receiver, DeAndre Hopkins, 8,400 on DraftKings, 8,600 on FanDuel. The Texans are at home versus the Titans as 6.5-point favorites, and we do have a low total in this game set at 40.5 points. And last week's shutout that the Texans had against the Patriots, where they were shut out by New England on Thursday night primetime, should keep ownership very low for the stack. Especially for Osweiler. I'm going to definitely limit exposure, so it's not a stack that I completely love this week, but it's one of my sneaky stacks that I'll try and hope that it goes off at low ownership. Osweiler has attempted 33 or more passes in each game so far this year, and his fantasy production hasn't been great yet, but he did face 2 tough defenses out of the 3 weeks in New England and Kansas City. Hopkins has scored 16, 27, and 9 DraftKings points with 8 or more targets in each game. So it's not great for his standards, but it does show that production is still there. He's getting the targets, and he's still getting some catches and some yards. And he does have big upside with multiple 30 or more DraftKings point games last year. Moving on to a running back for NFL Week 4, I'm going with Mark Ingram of the Saints, 5,900 on DraftKings, 6,800 on FanDuel. The Saints are at San Diego with the highest total of the week at 53.5 points, which is a pretty crazy high total for an NFL game. The Chargers are 23rd in yards against per carry, giving up 4.4 yards per carry this year, and they were 31st in that stat in 2015. So the Chargers are just not good against the run. Ingram had 15 rushing attempts for 77 yards and 4 catches for 30 yards and a touchdown in Week 3 on Monday night for 22.7 DraftKings points. The Saints don't like using their running backs too much, but Ingram's in a great spot here versus a weak run defense, and at the price, I definitely like him this week. Moving on to another wide receiver, I'm going to go with Tyrell Williams of the Chargers, 4,400 on DraftKings, 6,400 on FanDuel. And I'm going to stick in the same game. We're going to pick on the Saints pass defense this time. The Saints currently rank 26 in yards against per passing attempt after finishing dead last in 2015. And all around, the Saints defense is ranking 31st in yards against per play, and they're giving up 32 points against per game. In 2 games as a starter, Williams has scored 12 and 15 DraftKings points, and this is his best matchup yet. I think he's going to at least score 15 DraftKings points this week, and I'm hoping for maybe 20 or more for him. I expect ownership to be pretty high on both him and Travis Benjamin, but I definitely will be taking some of Tyrell Williams this week. My first tight end of the week is going to be Zach Miller from the Bears, $2,700 on DraftKings, $5,000 on FanDuel. The Bears are at home versus the Lions as 2.5-point underdogs. This game's got a higher total set at 46.5 points. Unfortunately, Miller had a monster game on Sunday Night Football, putting up 27 DraftKings points. And I say unfortunately because that should boost his ownership quite a bit, especially at this cheap price tag as the pricing was set before that Sunday Night Football game. I had liked this pick before Sunday Night Football as the Lions are one of the worst teams in the NFL against tight ends over the last year. Miller has also scored double-digit DraftKings points in 6 of his last 11 games with 7 touchdowns in that span. So Zach Miller, even though he's going to be very popular, I'm going to be playing him at 2,700. All right, so 4 more DraftKings and FanDuel NFL Week 4 picks for you. Starting off with running back Jordan Howard from the Bears, 3,700 on DraftKings, 5,600 on FanDuel. Howard should be the clear number 1 running back for the Bears with Langford missing time due to an injury. As mentioned, the Bears will be hosting the Lions, who are 27th in the league in yards against per play and dead last in yards against per rush attempt, giving up 5.1 yards per rush. Howard rushed 9 times for 45 yards in Week 3 and added 4 catches for 47 yards and 13 DraftKings points versus the Cowboys. Howard will most likely be the highest owned player on the Sunday slate at both DraftKings and FanDuel. So risky GPP players can roll the dice and fade him to try to gain an edge, but I don't recommend a full fade if you play multiple lineups. So if I'm doing 10 lineups, I'll probably at least have him in maybe 2 or 3, depending on where I think ownership's going to be. But I don't really recommend a full fade against Howard. I think he will have a pretty decent game here, and $3,700 is way too cheap for him. Another wide receiver I like this week is Terrell Pryor from the Browns. He's 4,300 on DraftKings, 7,000 on FanDuel. He's very cheap on DraftKings, where I think he'll be very high owned, but he might be a good GPP play on FanDuel, where his price has gone up quite a bit. Pryor and the Browns are facing Washington, and he might be a good player to throw in the Cousins stacks I mentioned earlier to create a bit of a game stack. The Redskins rank 30th in the NFL, giving up 6.6 yards per play, and 25th, giving up 7.2 yards against per passing attempt. And they're also going to be without D'Angelo Hall and possibly Breland, who are both key pieces in their secondary. Pryor totaled 34.9 DraftKings points in Week 3 versus the Dolphins with a combination of passing, rushing, and receiving in that game, and I expect the Browns to run a similar offense this week. Ownership will be high, but we can't ignore Pryor and his expected workload this week. My second tight end here is Jordan Reed from the Redskins, 6,300 on DraftKings, 7,500 on FanDuel. I mentioned how there were a number of good options for Cousins stacks, and Jordan Reed has to be mentioned this week. I'm not a big fan of paying up for expensive tight ends, but in Reed's case, he can sometimes be looked at as a top-tier receiver with the upside he's shown in the past. Reed had multiple games with 30 or more DraftKings points last year, and after 3 below-average games from Reed to start the season, I'm expecting him to be a little less owned here in Week 4 in a good matchup versus the Browns, so I'll be taking him in a handful of my lineups this week. My defense/special teams play of the week here is going to be the Carolina Panthers, $3,400 on DraftKings, $4,800 on FanDuel. I try to mention value defense plays instead of going with the more obvious high price plays, but the Panthers are the 6th price defense play this week at DraftKings, and I think ownership will be spread out with a lot of good high tier options above them, including the Cardinals, Seahawks, Broncos, and Redskins. The Panthers will play the Falcons in Atlanta, and although the Falcons offense has been high powered this year, scoring 34.7 points per game, which is first in the NFL, They have also faced the Buccaneers, Raiders, and Saints, who all have below average defenses. The Panthers rank 5th in the league on defense, giving up just 4.7 yards per play. And I definitely wouldn't go all in on the Panthers defense versus the Falcons on the road, but I think ownership will be below 10% and might be a good GPP play. If you want a cheap defense, I'll be taking a look at the Bills, depending on who's going to be starting at quarterback for the Patriots this week. So those are my NFL Week 4 picks for DraftKings and FanDuel. If you want to win more money this year at Daily Fantasy Sports, check out Fantasy Labs, my favorite DFS tools. I've got a link in the YouTube description. They helped me win a lot of money last year. They've helped a lot of people win some money this year. Check them out if you don't already have an account. If you enjoyed this video, please click that thumbs up or like button on YouTube. It will help support my YouTube channel and also let me know that you want me to keep doing these videos weekly. As always, guys, good luck in your contest this week. Hope you make some money. Cheers. If you don't want to miss out on any videos that I post, I would love for you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. To do that, just click on this button over here. Or if you want to watch another one of my videos that I think you'll enjoy, click on the video image over here.